If you've ever wondered how a storyteller can grow from childhood production training, achieve Emmy-winning media moments, and now lead statewide equity communications, all while hosting a daily show that spotlights community brilliance, then this conversation is for you. Welcome to Elite Insights, where we elevate vision, amplify voices, and engage with purpose. I'm Carlos Imani, your host, and today I get to sit across from my sister, TreaAnna Holliday. How you doing, Trey?
What's good, loves? How are you?
Oh man, I'm having a day. Thank you for making time. You're definitely one of the most busiest women I know in the business, in the city, and just for you to be able to make time. I got the text earlier. Hey, just got done with my meeting. On my way to you. So like literally you be on it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an honor to be able to be here. Thanks for thinking of me.
Of course. As always, Elite Insights, the purpose of it is to provide insight for folks, to be able to go a little bit deeper. We want to be able to provide value to folks that are watching that might be in the beginning steps of a journey that might be similar to myself or whoever's sitting across from me, right? Mm-hmm. And by sharing stories, I think we can provide, some solutions, inspire, people to make that jump, that's been thinking about, I've been always wanting to do this or that, and, be able to sit across folks that have had the courage to jump, sometimes not knowing where we're going to land, but we're going to go ahead and do it, and we're going to do it together. And then for me also, I get to just bring flowers and give them to my people that inspire me and that do dope things in community. So
awesome. I'm honored, for real.
Yeah, no, that's what's up. So I like to start off every conversation just to kind of, again, level set. Obviously, I know you, we go back, but folks might not know where it started. And for you, this is a unique one. You're one of the folks one of my oldest friends. So I always like to start with what is your earliest Elite Collective, or in your case, Carlos Imani, memory?
It's so interesting to ask me that. And I'm glad I get to start here. Carlos, you and I, we go back all the way to Seattle Central.
Come on.
This is, oh my gosh, like 2001. I was so honored to.
We were both 7.
No, yeah. I mean,
7 years old.
It's interesting because I always go back to the point of being like, no, I was there when Los first picked up the camera. Like, this was the beginning of what we now know as Elite Collective.
My villain arc.
Yeah, I mean, you were so relentless in figuring it out, and that's what I remember. I remember you being at Seattle Central and being like, man, let me just start trying to take photos of the homies. Like, it was just that simple, right? And to see you go from that to like event planning, you had the parties popping, like all of that, working with my guy, Tyrone Love, of course, rest in paradise. But I got to see you. We were students, man. We were trying to figure it out back then.
Taking over the world.
Yeah. Meet you improve.
Come on, let's go. Yeah, no, man, that's yeah, those are some fond memories for sure. That brings it all the way back. And lets people know, like, no matter where you are, no matter where you're at, you can start.
Yeah.
Literally. For me, like you had mentioned, I had my camera my mom got me for my birthday, and it was like in between classes, lunch. I'm taking pictures of folks running up to Kinko's up the street on Broadway and printing them out and coming back and selling it to them. And that was just kind of how it started. And those were some fond memories of like, I mean, literally you can get it from the bottom and bring it and take it as far as you want, as long as you have that dedication. I tell the kids nowadays, like, man, y'all got it easy. Like, we didn't have YouTube university the way that they have out now. Anything you want to learn, you just throw that into the little search, like, oh, there's a video on how to do it.
And ChatGPT will give you the blueprint.
Come on.
We did not have none of that.
Exactly. Like, my thing was like, man, I was going to Glazer's University, renting camera gear every weekend and just trying to figure it out. And then, on the other side, seeing you on that journey as well, just always, for me, it was like always being able to just be, lunchtime, paint the picture, Seattle Central. And it's like, there goes Trey. And here's this orb of people around her just kind of gravitated to her energy, because it was always a smile, always talking about something, always planning and scheming on what we going to do next and how we going to do it. And just always had perspective, which it was always a joy. And I think that's why we we were kind of drawn to each other. It was just that those positive vibes.
Yeah,
For
absolutely.
sure.
And I appreciated I think the foundation of like, yo, there was always an essence of liberation for our people. Like just, as we're learning all of these, collegiate concepts and, understanding our place in the world as young adults, I think it's just the freedom of, imagination, and visioning, like who are we going to be in this world? What impact are we going to make? And I really appreciate those times, man. So fond memories.
Right?
Indeed.
No, it's good to if you don't remember where you've been, you can't figure out where you're gonna go. And then again, I wanted to have this as an opportunity and for us like a special treat to kind of dive even further back from there of like what led you to this couch, right? In production, in terms of production in general. Has it kind of been? I mean, for me, it's like the stories that you shared, it almost is like, man, this has been part of your DNA for a minute. So why don't you share with us kind of how you got started with some of your earliest memories?
It's so interesting because as a young girl, I was very photogenic and
Still are. Come on.
still, yes,
Still
right,
got it.
I still will rock a camera in a whole, photo shoot. But I was recognized for that when I was about 4 years old, and a company wanted me to, come on board so they could train me in TV work and commercials and film. And my mom was like, oh, not my baby, right? So that's my earliest memory when my mom explained to me. And I remember because I would, we were going to Yen Louis back then and taking, photos, and it was like glammed up, and it always felt like a fun time, but I loved it. And so from that point on, like, my mom was like, no. But then when I was about 9, I heard a radio ad in the car with my parents for ABC Kids and Teens. Now, this was a full-on, production training, right, type of company. And they were like, hey, are you interested in being on TV and film and modeling? And I'm like, oh, my ears perked up. And I looked into it with my parents. I said, Mom, Dad, like I was like, I want to do that. And I was one of those babysitters. I had a whole babysitters club that was big back then. And so I had a little bit of money stashed. And I was like, I will like invest in myself. And of course, it wasn't enough to cover it. But my parents saw something in me. I was serious about it. And from that point on, I got the training, right? I learned how to do things. I was one of those Bill Nye the Science Guy kids. Did a lot of like independent film, commercial, these different things. Learned how to audition, which is a heavy part of, I think, any actress or actor's journey. So learning how to audition at a young age, how to be in front of the camera, how to do things like reading a prompter, like all of these kind of things that I wouldn't have guessed, like, oh, wow, because I thought I was going to be a strong actress. I went to Howard for theater. I started in, doing theater in high school at Garfield to take that acting to the next level. I was a part of a little modeling troupe when I first got to Garfield, and then it evolved into, theater. We built our own theater troupe. We were producing our own shows, taking them to other schools. Shout out to Justin Emeka for his amazing mentorship and leadership and guidance. And of course, Felicia V. Loud, who was an anchor for me as a young person. I saw her in Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry when I was young. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's singing, she's acting, and she's phenomenal. And I was like, I want to do that. And so I love being able to now, years later, call her my friend, Justin, my friend, like these folks that really poured into me. Those relationships have continued. And I would never would have guessed that, I'd have my own show and I'd get to be myself in front of the camera. I shout out to King 5. I went there right after college and learned a lot of the like major media ropes. So it's been a long journey for sure. I'm grateful for it.
No, I love that. And it seems like literally, you hear these things of everything that you did prepared you for today. But for you, it was like literally like you were just kind of going through, adding little skills and extra things that you could then put into your tool belt and be able to share with us every day on wonderful things like The Day with Trey. And we see it, show up as you do in community and in hosting and in other places. And I love what you just said in terms of like, you being able to show up as yourself.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that comes from going through those practices and those trainings. And I think it's like you being able to get comfortable with yourself and confident in yourself. And then your authentic self has the opportunity to just be on full display.
Yeah.
And the importance of that. So even, obviously you're amazing and by all means should definitely deserving of a show like The Day with Trey. But even if you're someone in community that, has something to say, it's like, man, turn on your webcam, start your own podcast, just get the practice, work on your voice, work on, sharing what you want to say and, see where it goes.
And now today, technology is somewhat in our fingertips. Almost everyone has a cell phone. Even if you have nothing else, you can start with that cell phone and little small selfie videos and throw those up on YouTube. The fact that we have such access right now to the technology, I think, really breaks down any barrier that people may have experienced before. And I will say that I think every level of it really anchored me in furthering my understanding of what I bring, right? Which is really key, I think, invaluable for me over the years, honing in on that more. Because even at King 5, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to be an anchor. I didn't want to be a reporter. I was like, there's these boxes you kind of got to fit into. And shout out to those who poured into me while I was there. But it was like, that was good for me to see because you don't know if you're not in the environment, right? And so I think that it took a lot of all of these things, to be honest, like you said, like building upon them to be able to really live my dream.
Well, and you're living it.
Yeah,
we are grateful for it, for sure. Which leads us into the Day with Trey. Emmy Award-winning Day with Trey. But I want to kind of get into that. If you could share with some folks, there might be someone out there that hasn't heard of you before. They could have just come out of a cave or under a rock. But can we talk a little bit about your journey with Converge? The morning update show, and then what led us to what is now our little town jewel of Day with Trey.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Every time I think about this journey, Omari and I started producing content together in 2018, and we were doing like infomercials for different stuff. We were covering different stories, and back then it was Africatown Media Network, right? And it was a beautiful thing because we started to just develop the things that we wanted to produce. It was like uninhibited. It still really is in that sense, right? We've really carried that spirit forward. But, working with him, and as the pandemic set in for us, I think there was a firm understanding, like he had this vision of like, man, we've got to do something because the news is not covering what our community members need to know. And the Morning Update show was born. And so co-hosting that with him, for the time it was on air, 2.5 years of let's just bring people the information that they need. And of course, covering the protest movement and, being in the thick of, the Capitol Hill area, Chop Chad's moments of time and history now for Seattle was really huge for us in a sense of we were just doing what we were already doing. But now there was, the global eyes on Seattle in a way that I don't think we could have really ever imagined, essentially. And it spawned off because as we wrapped up the Morning Update show, there was an opportunity to say, okay, what can we do as a daily show? And I had already been doing parts of the Day with Trey on the Morning Update show. I had my Feel Good Friday segment, right? Bringing community members in to really uplift and amplify everyday heroes, sheroes, theros, like, right? Everyday folks who are doing brilliant things in their lives. And from that, we landed on the Day with Trey and, a play on my name of Trey Holliday, of course, but also literally the day with me, right? And amplifying that brilliance in our community. And, we are on Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. on all streaming platforms. But I realized that, I think back in the day, there was this need of like, how do we break into like some network or And now we just have the power of creating the stories.
You are your network.
Yeah, like creating the stories we want to see, and making sure that everyday folks, for me, this is, I mean, yes, I interview celebrities and people coming into town, and, you know, these amazing partnerships we have with live performance venues like Paramount Theater and so many others. And so I really have an opportunity to talk with, you know, high, top-notch, global, you know, opera singers and performers and actors and actresses. And it's beautiful because there is a value in the platform that we've built. And at the same time, we have to be mindful of what got us there. And that was the community. And so I'm grateful that the Day with Trey really has become like that place where we say where Seattle comes to talk. And I realized, okay, it's beautiful because people can feel comfortable in coming on camera. So many times people are uncomfortable and they're like, I don't know. Oh goodness, the lights, it's bright in here. But I'm grateful that it's really become that place for folks and for us to uplift the brilliance and inspire people with everyday stories.
No, I love that. And that's truly what it is. Like every time, you know, I catch it, it's something inspiring. You know, it's either something that's about to happen, something that, you know, they just got done doing. And a lot of them are, you know, familiar faces or names, like, oh yeah, I remember hearing about them. But then to hear you bring out that story from them, like you said, a lot of folks, you know, they're not trained media people, but because they can just sit down with you and it's just like, it feels like home, it's community, they can share. You know, there's certain conversations that happen in the Black Media Matters studio that cannot happen anywhere else, just because of proximity, right? It just doesn't feel like home. I might need a code switch a little bit. I might need a whatever, right? Yeah. But with you, it's just like, man, I could just be myself because she's being herself. That's and right. We just talking. And it's dope because it's like, you know, it's the person running for local, you know, school board, and it's Johnny Gill, you know what I'm saying? The next day. And it's just, that's just normal. That's right. Just a week with Trey. And that's amazing to see. And just knowing that it's like, it's so just, you know, as we reach up into the air and try to get to all heights and live in our best selves, you're so planted, you know, and in community and in that foundation. So it's dope to see all of that come together.
Well, I have a firm belief, too, that the beauty of what we experience here in the Pacific Northwest in terms of amplifying everyday people is that the reality is people are more inspired by everyday people. I mean, I think celebrities kind of, sometimes it feels unrealistic. You know, oh, my goodness, you know, look at Beyonce and you go back, you can go through all of her interviews and you can see, especially now with like YouTube and stuff, right? You can see the evolution of her on camera. You can kind of see her growing and growing and growing into who she is today. But when you see who she is today, you don't automatically think, oh my God, I can do that. And I think what's beautiful about amplifying and spotlighting everyday folks is we have a way to rid ourselves of the apathy that I think is inherent in our society right now because of the explosion of technology and the micro targeting that happens, right? I'm on my phone and I'm getting certain ads, and you're on your phone and you're getting certain things. And so it's a little bit individualistic in that way. It's separating us a little bit. We're not having necessarily a shared experience, right? And so I think there's something really special about everyday folks showcasing to everyday people that you can do whatever the it is, you can do it too.
No, I love that. And like you said, it's just that inspiration. If they could do it, I could do it too. And understanding that, you know, life be lifing. Yeah. Right. And then when you see someone that overcame a thing, or, you know, essentially you could just relate. It's just a human experience. And it's understanding that, you know, there's always a path forward. We can always choose joy. Right.
That's right.
And I'm a firm believer in that, where it's like, whatever happens to you is going to happen. And it's just like, how do you want to approach that?
That's right.
You know, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I see more times than not on your show is joy has been chosen on whatever path that that person is taking. And speaking of past, we'll take this as an opportunity to, because apparently you were just, bored and didn't have enough things to do, and somehow ended up at the office of equity for Washington State. And I remember when you first told me about it, I was like, wait, you're doing what? And then you told me a little bit more in terms of communication, and like, okay, it makes sense. Yeah. But can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing at the state, how you got there, and apparently how you've managed to find more time than the average human to get all this done?
You know what? It's one of those things where I just gotta say, someone really close to me said, "So when do you have days off?" And I was like, oh, I don't actually, right? And so I've got to be more intentional about it, right? And have a good balance. Right now, it's just like, it's go time. Right. And has been for several years. But, the day with Trey actually was the first opportunity for me to really showcase my talent to the first director of the Office of Equity, Dr. J. And I was able to interview her. I had been in space with her in community because I was in an advocacy role as a media director for King County Equity Now at the time. And so we were heavily beating on Governor Inslee's door, like, what are you doing for Black folks, right? And when she came on board, we're like, okay, what is this office going to do for Black folks? How are you tapping into the Black community? Pretty relentlessly. And she, was a guest on my show and got to experience, me having a great conversation with her and bringing out her story and really her goals and vision for the office. And she was impressed by it. And she offered me a role at the Office of Equity. She said, we need your brilliance here. And I had to consult with my spiritual folk and like, man, because I've been in community, really cementing myself here in community. And sometimes, most of the time, when you're steeped in community work, you see governmental entities as like the other side. And we're always advocating for our needs to these folks in other positions of power that have access to the resources we need in community. So there's this divide that I understood and have been a part of for years. And but it was the right time to take an opportunity to bring a community-driven perspective in the role of building the communications platform for the Office of Equity. They hadn't had one before I came on board. They were still just starting, and it was a really small team. I think there was 7 people or something when I joined the office. We're now at close to 40, right? So it was small, and it was needing, I think, that opportunity to take my communications brilliance, which my degree is in communications. Come on. And urban studies, right? So like, it made sense. And it was such a great opportunity for me to say, okay, not only can I do this in community, but now I can do it for the state. And at the time, I did not quite recognize maybe the position of the office over the last couple of years under the direction of Director Megan Matthews. Like, Dr. J did a phenomenal job of anchoring the Office of Equity in terms of the way that we're funded, the relationships that she was able to make, and really getting folks to understand a bit about what we were trying to do. And then Megan stepped in as director and said, okay, we have a foundation to build. We need to fill the positions that have been funded under the work of, Dr. J. And so it's just it's beautiful because in this space, I have been able to work directly with Director Matthews and our leadership, our executive team, to ensure that the way we tell stories in the Office of Equity is reflective of, lived experience in communities. And how can we be kind of a leading voice in that way when it comes to state government? I mean, it's still a work in progress because we're talking state government, right? It's slower to move, but it's beautiful because we've been able to achieve several milestones that really feel like, wow, okay, the things that we are doing to really bridge the gap and make government more accessible to Washingtonians, parts of that are working. So How do we water those parks? How do we grow them in an organic way that allows not only our communication to be reflective of all Washingtonians, but the work that we're doing, the policies we're creating, the approaches that we're taking. This office was created to do systems change work. And people are like, what is systems change, right? And it's like, well, we have to recognize that the systems have been harmful in the past. They haven't worked for everyone. How do we make sure that they work for everyone? How do we change them so that it is reflective of all the needs of all Washingtonians? And it's beautiful to be a part of the work, for sure.
Right. And that's super dope. And like you said, you get to do it on a state level, right? Where you get to make that impact across the board. And I've had the opportunity to see some of these campaigns and see some of the things that you guys have been super intentional about, where it's like, man, like literally representation matters. We want to go out to the rural woman farmer, and all the things in between that you can imagine. And it's dope that you guys have been able to do that. And I wanted to kind of imagine, like, I'm thinking of, you're doing it at a state level, which for us, obviously that's the highest and furthest level that we can do in our state. But there could be different levels in different counties or cities or just other organizations in terms of like, what are some things that you can share around like bridging storytelling and communities and government?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple of things. So one, I'm really excited about a website we recently launched called wallforall.wa.gov. Short term is Wall for All. And it is a part of a framework that we're taking to really do the systems change work. Wall for All as a site has just brought together all of these amazing resources that already exist in different agencies across state government. And folks may say, I need something. I don't know where to go to get to something. So what we realized was, how do we make these resources that are already there more accessible? So Wall for All does that. They're congregated into different groups. We have some demographic groups, but we also have groups that are really about community conditions, which we call our statewide impact areas, right? Where are some heavy areas that are clear needs of Washingtonians that we see through data? We've seen it through experience. We've heard from folks. We've surveyed, right? How do we take the needs and build to make sure that we're fulfilling them? And so these impact areas also help us kind of congregate the resources. So if you're looking for food or housing or healthcare or something around, childhood education, they're congregated in those ways. They're grouped together in those ways on this site. And it's amazing because we've said, look, we don't know what we don't know. So if you're someone out there who has resources or of resources that really help you, there's a form that you can fill out that says share your resources at the top. We also recognize that a lot of our, community-based organizations, small businesses, they're looking for opportunities to get grants from the state, to do business with the state. So we created a funding and grants and funding page that also, again, brings together all of these resources into one source. I think as a comms person, I get really geeky about, the ways that we can just take what's already there and make it super easy for people to tap in with, right? Like there's some amazing things that we can do. And Wall for All gets us in the right direction. We want to create some additional, search engine tools with this. So if you're in a certain zip code, eventually you can look in that zip code. We also maybe want to create an app out of this. So it's right there on your phone, make it easily accessible for you to find what you need. And that is really in our mandate as an office. We were mandated by RCW 43.06D. Y'all can look it up if you want, but it basically says, the Office of Equity is created to make government more accessible, right? To make these resources accessible so people have what they need in their lives to thrive. And so Wall for All is a great step in that direction. And then I'll say too that over the years, we've been really intentional about how to bridge the gap between community and government. And this, you were phenomenal, your team, last year at our convening. So we have this annual event, and this year with the budget we didn't, but we're looking forward to bringing it back in 2026. This amazing time to say, no, community, come in. Hey, government agencies, come together with community. Share the work you're doing. Community, share the work you're doing. So we have community-led workshops. We have agency-led workshops. And we as the Office of Equity are the convener of it all. And instead of calling it a conference, we're like, no, it is a convening. We're literally bringing people together. And I get really excited about that because these are major efforts that my team is heavily involved with. But there's also some, just some phenomenal work around transparent data and making sure that every Washingtonian, like the public, can access all of these amazing data sets. And if you're somebody who is looking for grants, we know you need that, right? As a small business or organization, when you're trying to say, no, look, this is the subset of the people I'm serving, and here are what the needs are. How can we take those statewide impact areas and make the data that is around transportation, housing, food insecurity, make it super accessible? And so we're launching these amazing hub sites that have that data readily available. The first one that I'm excited we launched was around our unhoused population, around homelessness. It is a dashboard that finally, the first time in Washington State, brings together all of these data resources into one space that showcases a really complete almost. There might be some that are out there that we don't have in there, but we worked really hard with community, with agencies, with, quasi-governmental agencies to get all of that data into one source. Lastly, and so we have a homelessness dashboard out there that's talking about homelessness as another community condition. And lastly, I'm excited. We're in the development of, bringing county, city, and state employees together. And so I'll probably come back and talk about it. We're in the development of this, but it hasn't been done where all of these employees who work in government across the board are talking to one another about what are we doing to build a Washington for all. If we just say that, it can fall on deaf ears. When folks say, oh, that's like all lives matter. It's like, no, but we are talking about, we recognize that there are various needs across Washington State. Doesn't matter who you are. There are some various needs that we have to address as state government. And we recognize that some counties and cities are doing a phenomenal job, and others might need to really get help and understand where's the network where we can share the things that are working, where we can begin to have shared approaches and practices to this work. And so I'm really looking forward to that. We're just in the beginning development phase of it, but already the folks that we've been talking to that are city workers, that are county workers are like, wait a minute, we've never done that. Like, wow, this is going to be impactful. So I really appreciate the work that we do as an office, because first and foremost in our minds is, are we serving Washingtonians? How best can we serve them? Are we doing a good job? How can we make sure that we're being led by their experiences and their voices? And how can we make government more accessible?
No, I love that. And the fact that you guys are planting those seeds for just that work to be done at the city's, county and state level is dope. I've always, wondered, just from being afar and working in different capacity with different agencies, like, why don't they work more together? It never made sense to me of like, why cities don't work together, counties. And I get it. They all kind of have their own needs and need to serve their own constituents. But it's like, if we can learn from each other, then as a whole, we can be better. So it's like, yo, you figured out how to do this because this worked. I'm like, chances are it could probably work over here. Right. So I'm excited to see where that goes. And yeah, I think just leaning into what works and leaning into people's skill sets in terms of like, I'm imagining, the conversations around this dashboard and unhoused populations, leaning in with organizations that's been doing the work. That's right. It's like what has been working, what is effective, and then making that type of work more accessible and those resources and that knowledge base more accessible beyond just that area that they are serving is can be huge. And then you just apply that to whatever other impact area is there it's kind of those like, well, yeah, that just makes sense, but it just hasn't been done at a high, effective, efficient level, or it may have been led by a person that moved on, and then that was, that energy kind of went in a different direction. So super excited to see where that stuff goes. And you had mentioned like the convening, and you had mentioned some of this, the other work that we're able to do with you. And I wanted to take a moment to kind of bring us back there, because I'm imagining one is there's content creators, photographers, videographers that may want to think about ways that they could contribute to their city, state, county. And there might be organizations as well of like, hey, we're really good at this part of it, but they might not have that, brilliant communications director that thought of doing these things. And tell us a little bit about what that was like. Let's start first with the us getting the video assets for you and the importance of it. Because when you hit me up about it initially, I was like, yeah, it totally makes sense. And in my head, just made sense. Yeah, let's do it. And then 6 months later, after things have been deployed and you guys have released some of the content, I remember you saying like other departments were like, where did this content come from? This is brilliant. And the impact of it. And for me and you, it's everyday things that we don't think makes the kind of impact, or at least for me. I'm sure you kind of saw the vision because you saw what wasn't there, and we good at putting paint where it ain't. But talk through that lens of like, all right, identifying and what your strengths are, if a department, organization, whatever, leaning into the creatives and the communicators and those kinds of things, and then talk about real, actual things that how you're able to move that needle from, that governmental side.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think we have to, this is why I'm grateful for the office, and really for Dr. J saying, nah, man, you're brilliant. I need you over here on my team, because I asked a lot of questions about, are you sure? I'm super pro-Black, or like, are you sure?
You
right?
want all of me. Yeah. That's what you're going to get.
But it's true. Like, I am steeped in the community, and I'm grateful for the creative contacts I have, the folks, we've known each other for all these years. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me, right? But it is because I'm already tapped into it. What I love is that I recognized early on, the government does a lot of business. It just does a lot of business. There are a ton of contracts out there, and they're looking for amazing folks. I just happen to know them already, right? But the reality is that this is where a lot of work is happening right now around state contracting. Statewide contracting has felt restrictive for global majority communities probably since it began, period. There is a need for folks in community to know that these opportunities exist. Now, there may not be many in a budget shortfall, but it doesn't mean that there are zero, or that you can't gear yourself up for taking on some of these amazing opportunities. So grateful for my team to say, no, if you know who needs to be here, how do we make it happen? And we went through the proper processes, and we were able to make it happen, because I knew that you would understand the vision immediately, right? Like, this is kind of what is missing, and we can't get it in stock footage, right? Like, what we need is real Washington, born of the soil. Like, show me the different amazing landscapes we have here, right? We have everything, first of all, for anybody trying to do film here, right? We have everything here. But there's something to be said about how government can be better to make those opportunities more broadly known. And so one thing that has taken place since you and I did the initial work together in that way was an actual statewide contract for media work. So they didn't have that before. And so now, through the work of the folks over at the Department of Enterprise Services, or DES, they have now an actual media like list. And while there are some things that I'm like, hey, how did people know about that? Because there's a lot of people that aren't on it right now. And the contract basically says people can apply and they get accepted, right? Some of them get accepted, and they're basically like, hey, we can do direct business with these businesses that have been accepted in this contract when I need this type of work done. And so it ranges from content creation, website development. I mean, it's almost all things multimedia, essentially. So what's being worked on right now is, wait a minute, how do we make that more broadly known? And then how do we eliminate the barriers? Because that contract is like 7 years. So if you didn't get in, you got to wait for 7 years to get in. And how do you know when it's open? So a lot of that stuff is really being worked at, because we recognize that for our small, global majority owned businesses, the understanding of, wait, I'm busy running my business. Like, when would I have time to be checking this website all the time to see if there's anything that applies to my skill set that I can do business with in terms of the state? So we have to be better. And I say we in terms of state government. I think, county and city government, if we can do shared practices, if we can create something that makes sense for folks to use, to your point earlier, then let's do that, right? Let's have a statewide practice of how we work better with smaller businesses and community-based organizations who are brilliant in the work they do. And so I just came into it with that perspective because of my purview, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm grateful even more so that the acknowledgement of, wait a minute, this isn't working, right? Like, sure, people are getting contracts, but is it the same people all the time? And now at this point, is there kind of do they kind of have a monopoly on this contract because they keep getting it all the time? Or government has a tendency to do business with the ones that they know, and how do we get them to move away from that model? So I think there's a lot being done with all of these amazing procurement agencies across state government. The Office of Equity is involved in bringing these agencies together, and the work that's happening is moving in the right direction to eliminate barriers, to grow the direct buy limit. For a lot of, smaller agencies, our direct buy limit was capped at like 40,000, but some of the work you need is more than 40,000. And they don't want you to do a bunch of, contracts with the same. So all of these parameters, how do we alleviate some of that? Because some of it doesn't make sense. And what I love is that we have brilliant folks at the table who are like, wait a minute. Yeah. And this is OMWBE, Department of Enterprise Services, Department of Transportation, who does major contracts with outside vendors. We have major folks involved in that body of work. So I think that there's some steps happening in the right direction there.
I love that. And then secondly, I want to tap into the convening a bit as well. Just like how you guys were like, all right, we've been to conferences, and conferences are great. There's positive things that can come from them. But we're going to approach it a little bit different with this convening of bringing people together, and wanted to kind of talk through, again, folks that are out there that might be thinking about putting together something, like we both know and love our sister Ashley with the Therapy Foundation, and watch what they have done with Reclaiming Wellness, right? It's a very similar type of thing of like, hey, I have this idea. I want to get this out. I want to bring in people to share this information that is respective to this particular topic. And she had tapped us in to kind of help out with the AV and go through some of that stuff in terms of like the storytelling. And then last year, or this actually just passed in July, was the biggest one yet down at Lumen Field. And it's one of those things where you just kind of have to take that step, right, and make that happen. Obviously, you guys have resources that are a little that are larger, and then also just access to people and departments and stuff. So our first time working with you guys was last year for the convening out there in Yakima, the Yakima Convention Center. But one, just wanted to talk through, how do you guys as an organization or a team make that decision of like, okay, we need to work with these people, or, kind of start that conversation? Because I'm sure there's a table meeting happening now, like, hey, are we ready to do that? And if we are, can we do it by ourselves, or what can we do well within? And then what do we reach out to, and what do we look for in that partner in production?
Yeah. This is one of those things where you see a huge monopoly in the industry, particularly, and I'm sure you've experienced this
a little bit
around audio and visual for live events, like for big major conferences, you hear a lot of the same names being circulated.
I think they go by a preferred vendor.
Yeah, right.
Was the hidden term where some folks don't realize preferred doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah. And sometimes when you're newer at contracting, you're like, how much time do I have to flesh out a different vendor? Okay, this vendor knows this space really well, right? Like they know it, they've done it. There's no real question about it. They're already in the area. They got this. So there's a lot, I think, that goes into it, honestly. And a couple of things I will say to this is, when we are on the other side, and I only know this because I'm coming from community, but being on the other side to say, okay, now I'm on this side with the state, and I have the ability to be intentional about who we're bringing in. That allowed me to say, how do we think outside of the box here? Because I get it. They've done it before. Y'all have used them before, maybe several times. That's one thing. What I love is the Office of Equity is still really new. So we're building our relationships. We are establishing ourselves in communities and even more so in state government, right? Like people are starting to go, wow, okay, Office of Equity, like I've not been to an event like this at the state. I didn't know, an organization or agency in the state could do something like this. So our convening took on a life of its own, essentially, because of the response that people were giving us because they were there. So that's a great question in terms of like, you have to have the level of intentionality when you're on the procurement side. And through all of the rules, we had to understand the RFP process, right? Like you had to participate in a whole thing of like, all right, let me get my team together. Here's what we need. But as a procurement entity, we have to be more open to say, here is what this process looks like so that as a small business, you can plan for that. You have to take time away from maybe the actual business to pull together a proposal of that magnitude. And the reality is that if anybody who's in procurement doesn't understand, like, how do we make this simpler, or what can we do to make sure that those who have a small amount of staff, they might be up against capacity, how do we make this accessible to them? And it requires that level of thought and intentionality in your approach so that people can actually compete, right? Like it's not, there was this farce, and they were saying this earlier this week, this idea that the state would have to take the lowest bid. Like the state was like, whatever the lowest bid is, right? Because we're always thinking about, well, how are we using tax dollars? Is this a good use of the money? So there's a lot of I understand that, right? Like as a taxpayer, yes, I understand that. What we do is always and should always be focused on the public service, right? And so that sometimes means that government's not getting the top of the line thing because like that's too expensive and we can't do top of the line stuff because it's not necessary. I'm one who is like, but the experience, how do we start thinking about it differently? And I think, I think you have to have that level of intentionality when you have your hands on the side of procurement. For those who are on the other side, who are like, man, how do I even get into these opportunities? When I was a small business owner, I had a janitorial business with my ex-husband at the time. And as a small business owner, we had to take time to go through SCORE and figure out like, how do we do government contracting? There was all of these free webinars and free in-person sessions that before we really could like figure out what type of janitorial contracts even are available, we had to set up our accounts and all of these things. And so it does require on the side of the small business owner to say, if I really want to do business with the state, I understand there's some hoops I got to jump through. There's maybe some things that seem like, oh my goodness, this is a barrier. But what am I going to do to try to overcome it? So I think it's a both and. We both have an opportunity to say, okay, how do I carve out time? I get it, because as a business owner, I need to run my business. But how do I carve out time to maybe get a contract that could be generational for me? Because now my son can take over my business because I have now built the relationships that they know, oh yeah, no. And we got you on lock for 5 years. We got you on lock for 10 years. That's huge for a small business. That's huge when you think about the potential of being on a major contract and being able to say, man, we worked ourselves up to being able to do that. First couple of years, we had to subcontract a lot out. The last few years, we brought it all in-house because we could. But it's because we could plan on the finances that are coming from this long-term contract. So I just see it in a different way now. I think being on the other side as a community advocate and working in activism, and then as a small business owner, and now as someone who had the ability to be on the procurement side, I see that there is a need for us, on the procurement side to make things easier and accessible, and a need for us to also be able to work with those who are saying, this is my first time. So if I made that little mistake, is there a way for me to edit it versus you canceling out my entire application? So it's stuff like that that I think is really going to get us to the better balance that's needed. Yeah.
And I love that approach. It's kind of like, can we have some grace to fail forward a little bit? Yeah. Because like you said, and even from the state side, you could be missing out on an amazing provider of said service just because they were kind of just new to the process and forgot to submit the cover letter or, whatever it is. And because they didn't do it to the letter of that, the RFP, they're automatically disqualified. So having some grace and space for that it would be and is always dope if whenever it's possible. And then, I was on the other side of that. So I do recall, fine tuning and putting together these proposals, and they can be daunting for sure, and having to go through and staying on it. And it's just one of those things though, like you said, if you want to do work with the state or any of these higher level things, so these are universities, these are, any kind of government agency, city, county, state level, you kind of have to just be on your P's and Q's with it and making sure you have, all your licenses are on point, all your insurances are on point, all of your qualifications. So if you're, with the Office of Minority and Women-Owned Business, OMBE, and all that kind of stuff, making sure your certifications are redone. I had one that almost lapsed because I didn't send back in my financials. Like one of them is due every year, one of them's every 3 years, and it was just kind of like, man, does anyone have time for this? But I get it if that's the work that you're trying to do. But if and when you do, it's kind of one of those things where you also got to show up, man. You got to be on time, especially coming as a global majority. It's like you have enough things that are kind of working against you in terms of what people think, and some of those, warranted or unwarranted, many times unwarranted. But it's just one of those things where, you're not only representing for yourself, your business, your family, but you're representing for whoever comes after you. I always try to if I'm trying to eke through this little crack in the door, I want to kick it open and hold it open for whoever's behind me, meaning that I got to show up and show out. So you definitely have to be prepared to execute and anticipate winning that contract. Because sometimes it comes around the corner. We're like, all right, you've been accepted. We have a meeting on Monday for a kickoff. Like, are you prepared for that meeting? And those kinds of things. But I want to talk to that. I feel, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that last convening was a success. And
major success.
Can you talk about what it was like working with Elite Collective, right? To take off your friend hat, the homie hat, but just as a recipient of services. And what I'm trying to get from this conversation is, one, other agencies, hey, this Elite can work for you, but other creatives on the side, like, hey, this is the expectation, and this is kind of what winning can look like, and kind of give that perspective.
Well, let me say, I mean, homie or not, you came and won the RFP outside of knowing me, right? Like, I want to make that really clear.
That part.
Like, I want to make that really clear because you had all of the capability. Yeah. First off, I saw it in real time. We were at an event. Y'all had a full on, the multi-board, it was the exact same setup that I just saw in our previous convening. And I was like, I look at you, I said, Los, I didn't know you could do all this. And you're like, man, we've been grinding hard.
Literally,
right?
why we have elite insights. I'm like, people know you how they met you. And if I don't do a good job of letting the folks know what we can do, so I was like, let me have a podcast and we can talk about it.
No, so I'll say that I think, sometimes, and to your point, it's not fair. This is why we have to balance. It's not fair, even though it's very true and real and felt by global majority folk, that we always have to show up in our best version, because the minute that we show any type of flaw, we don't get the privilege of failure like white folks do. We don't. And I have said it my entire life, or it's definitely in my adult life, in my career. It's always been a thing. I'm a Black woman. I don't have the pleasure and the privilege of slipping and falling and being like, ugh, I just can't do, my emotions. I just can't. I've never had that privilege. So I don't know what it looks like. I don't think that that's necessarily fair, but it is true. And so I think there's work that needs to be done there, right? At the same time, because other folks fail all the time. They do, on the job, in a contract. I mean, there are plenty of contracts that's like, yo, we can't even pay for that because you didn't deliver on that thing, or we have to reduce something or cut the contract off now because you're not showing up. So I'm just saying, right? Like it's not as if everybody who wins these contracts is doing the greatest job. So that's really the truth. But you do have to be prepared when the opportunity arises. And one of the things I'll say about Elite Collective and your leadership was you carried it through 1,000%. You triple and quadruple checked things. And even in a live production environment, you're talking about, we got people virtual, we got people in person. We're trying to cater to both audiences. And okay, the audio is messing up. You were on it every time. Okay, do we need to switch out the cord? Okay, we're going to do that. Some things you can't even plan for because we ran the test and it was fine. And then we recognized, oh my goodness, their bandwidth. Their bandwidth doesn't allow for us to do all of this at the same time. Now, we didn't know that because we did the testing. We were doing multiple testings at a time, but it wasn't full blast, right? It wasn't full-fledged. And so, but with grace, your entire team handled everything you needed to do with grace, with, professionalism, and those things matter because you set a precedence. And everyone was like, oh my God, that was a phenomenal team. Like, where did you get them from? Like, everyone was like, there was no one that was like, geez, who were they? Because, I mean, did you get a discount or something? Like, nobody was off that. So I think you're absolutely right that, number one, Elite Collective shows up in a professional way. You are a full-fledged outlet. You do all of these amazing things very well at the top of the line. What I loved about working with you was not just because, like, man, there was like a moment of pride for me a little bit too, because I was just like, yo, like, I remember when you had the first camera, man, and you were going to Kinko's and you were, you know what I mean? And like me and Proof was, back to back with our little shirts, like, because you were setting up photo booths that, I could cry, Los, because I was just so proud of you as my brother too. Like, I was just like, and everyone on my team was coming to me, including my director, who was like, yo, these fools ain't playing no games with us up in here. It was beautiful, but you did rise to the occasion. You're professional, and it takes that. It takes that level of, let me really look at every nook and cranny. And I can't imagine how many hours you spent with your team gearing up for this. And so I think it's important when we talk about how we open up these opportunities for folks. I think it's important for people to say, nah, not because I know them, not because it wasn't. Like, we had to do a full-on RFP. Mm-hmm. Like, it was judged by other people, right? Like, the application, it wasn't on me to do that. And I was honest with you about it. I'm like, look,
the opportunity
is here, but I can't guarantee anything. Yeah. And then when you won the RFP and you got the contract, you're like, man, it's go time, Trey. And what I appreciate so much is that you said, I don't even want to let you down. And it touched me, Los, like, for real. So your Elite Collective is You've built it to this amazing conglomerate of not just services, but the right heart behind it, bruh. And yes, you should be going after all of these contracts that exist. We're not the only ones putting these kinds of things together. People are throwing conferences up here in Washington State all the time. Just being on the conference circuit alone creates an opportunity for your son to step into your position if he so wants to, right? Because those are the kinds of contracts that they go beyond. Like, people experience that professionalism. They're like, man, let's just run with them again and again and again. Because as a community-based organization or another entity that's not governmental, they can do that. They can just say, we choose to work with Elite Collective, right? There is no RFP. There is no process. We're not bound by that. And so some of these major institutions we got around here, like, show up for them like that. Get that opportunity. If there was ever anything I could do to be like, oh, you need to, you know what I mean? I'm always doing that, because you showed up and you did everything, right? It was seamless. You worked well with my events managers. They felt it. My entire team felt it. And it was just beautiful, man. So I thank you for showing up like that, because people knew. They were like, oh, you know them. Yeah, so what? I'm going to know people. So that's not, I think we also need to rid ourselves of the myth. We're not sitting here handing contracts to friends. If somebody I know wins a contract, yeah, I'm going to be honest about that. I know, yes, I do know them. But at the end of the day, like,
you're not on the hiring committee.
No, they did their thing to get here. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's important too. And so I just appreciate you and your leadership and Elite and just everyone showing up at that level.
No, I appreciate that. Got me, you know, I don't know, someone dropped some onions over here, cutting them up, all the good stuff. But no, that's real. And for me, what I would like to just kind of to say from that is, from any like creative that's looking to perform at any level, really, it's one of those things where it's like, you got to approach these things with intention, right? Yeah. And it's like, you can't just do it and just think it's just gonna work, right? You know, I always say, like, Kun Love always tells me, like, you know, we're very high functioning individuals, and there's a lot of things that we are able to make happen. But it's just because you can doesn't mean you should. True. You know, if I'm able to knock something out in a week, or, you know, it's that whole thing of I'm going to stay up late and do that paper in a night. But it's like, you get to a point where you just can't, you know, it's like, no, you have a 30-page paper. You're not doing that in a night. Mm-hmm. You have this 3-day convening. It's like, no, you're not going to be able to just knock that out in a week, or, hey, let's just show up and talk about it over lunch. It's like, man, we was meeting, I drove out there before even winning the contract. Just, I wanted to see the space myself and see what was going out there. And it's just that level of commitment of, like, how bad do you want it, and how good do you want to be at said job, and showing up with that intentionality. And when you start performing at a level where it's beyond yourself, because I went through life a long time as a solopreneur, and was cool. I had a blast throwing parties, doing photos and doing, all the things, right? And I just got to a point where it's like, I'm good, but I wanted something more. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily for myself, but for my people that I'm around. And it's like, okay, and also for clients, right? Where it's like, I'm able to perform at a higher level for you if I have a broader, wider access of resources and talents and stuff. And then you can just make one phone call instead of having to make, all right, Los, I locked you down for this thing, and now let me go make 7 more phone calls to do the rest of the things. So I saw that there was value that I was able to provide folks when I could build this dope team of creatives that I had been collecting over the years, that I had the privilege of working with and around. But at that same time, it's like, I've had iterations. So right now we have the Elite Collective that's been around since 2011. But before that, I had the Collective Management Group. And I've always been trying to build teams and do these things. But I had something that kind of clicked with Elite, in the sense of, we have to be around folks that also share that same vision as me, where it's like, this isn't for everybody. Like, the goal is excellence with empathy. Yeah. While understanding that perfection will never be achieved, It's only, the most high universe, however you want to talk about it. But it's the journey of trying to reach it is the intentionality of, right? I'm trying to show up and, do the best that I can. And I have that expectation of those around me so that we can show up for our client for the services or whatever that they're providing to. Because most of the time we're not even providing stuff to the end user. We're usually empowering you so that you can reach people. And there's something special with that because you're trusting us to help you with that message, with that amplification. And a lot of times, especially in the AV world, if I did a good job, people didn't even know I was there.
Yeah.
And that's okay. As long as my people know that, hey, we might be putting out fires in the back, but when you step on stage, they don't know what's going on. It's like, all right, Trey, here's the mic that works. Go on, do your thing, and you're just smiling, and the show continues.
Yeah.
But in the back, we're fixing things or whatever it is that we need to do, and it's just that teamwork and that trust and just understanding. So doing the preparation, there's a lot of stuff where you don't know what you don't know, and it's like at some point you have to do your first event, your first conference, your first convening. But if you've never done it, there's a lot of things you don't know. And not being afraid of like, hey, I can't do this by myself. Let me reach out to people that may have some of those connections. And what I've noticed, especially for us in production, specifically in AV, there's not a lot of people that look like us in that world. So I've been very intentional. A lot of times when I do find them, like I'll be at a different thing. Like we found a sister Violet doing audio for when we were doing Soul on the Water, and she was working for totally different folks. I was like, you contract? And she was like, yeah, here's my card. I was like, absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people, they show up as the only person on that team or in that room that looks like them. And I've been having the privilege, like, oh, well, let me bring you over here. Let me bring you over here and be able to do it. And, just one in particular was the MOK breakfast that we did last year. And it was like all Black women led, from first C1 camera to my program director and technical director of that entire show. And I got to sit back and look and like, this is dope. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like we're able to make these kinds of things happen, and they're all performing at a high level. And again, it's just one of those things where you can show up to work and be yourself.
That's right.
And then I think there's also that thing. And of course, we work with everybody, but that was like a unique moment where you never get to see that. And we had to take a moment like, man, look around, man. You guys is doing your thing. Like, this is dope. And again, just providing that resource. So we're able to take that person that hasn't had that experience, like, well, come on as like a PA or something and learn the ropes. What do you want to do more of? If you want to do audio, if you want to do more video or whatever, it's a place where we can kind of train up. So that's what I meant by earlier, where it's like, you get able to crack that door, man, kick that thing open behind you. But you always got to be able to perform at a high level. You have to show up with intention, and you have to be able to deliver, because it's not just on you. You lose that contract, but chances are you lost that contract, and then the next 3 people that try to apply it, it's going to be harder for them to do it too. So it's just one of those things, man. It's like, if you have opportunity, go for it, come prepared, and come and deliver.
Yeah, and I also think too, on the other side of it, the level of intentionality around, no, we know that if we can do this with, a global majority owned business, or, with a small business, that level of intentionality on the procurement side, I think it's so important, because, that's why I want to debunk that myth in terms of government spending. But it's the same across the board. It doesn't matter. If you can have a level of intentionality that says, do we have people on this team that reflect the folks that we are serving? Because everyone we're serving there's not a homogeneity there, right? We need to understand that. And that is a part that I think, folks can think about when they have these dollars that they know, okay, we need to get this kind of service, that kind of service. We need this, and this. Can they be more intentional about saying, how do I do this with, maybe someone who's never had the opportunity? Or how do I make sure that the RFP that we're putting out is out there for the public? How can we make it more and more broadly known? So there are things that I think can also be done to open up these opportunities for smaller and global majority owned businesses to compete.
Yeah, no, that is real. So yeah, man, show up, show out, do your work. I'm a firm believer of telling a story from the story. So at the very least, have someone on your team that is from said community that you're trying to serve, because they have those unique perspectives. There's a lot of things that we do share as a human experience, but there are a lot of things that you just won't experience if you're not from that community. If you truly want to be an ally, or you're truly wanting to serve, you need to have those perspectives. You need to have those voices. And yeah, so I love that.
Yeah.
And a nice little segue so we talked about some early journeys and tools that you were able to pick up along the way. Awesome stuff that you were able to do. We had the day with Trey. You were bored, so you decided to take up some communications with the Department of Equity. But all throughout this entire time, you've still been popping up and popping out and showing up for community in different ways. Like I said, my first memories were smaller versions of that, of showing out in space in the lunchroom or whatnot, where you had a platform and people just wanted to hear what you had to say. And you've been able to grace stages and hostings and different things. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that in terms of TreaAnna Holliday, the community voice, and what's kind of like next and what's been going on with that.
Well, it's another thing I'm just grateful for. It's interesting because when we were putting events together, and I was a part of King County Equity Now, and we just had all these events, it just naturally happened, right? Where I would be on stage emceeing or hosting, and like getting us through the agenda, essentially, or the program. And that really just took root. And it's funny because it manifested itself in so many different ways. Before KCN, I was doing some of that work with Africatown. Like there were these housing panels and stuff, and we're talking about affordable housing and affordable home ownership. And because of my, I guess, direct purview and the connection to my work as an organizer in that space, it made sense. And so people started hiring me for that. And I was like, oh, sure, I can moderate your panel on whatever. Sure, I can be a panelist on whatever. But then it really kind of took off in 2020 for all these amazing opportunities. And I'm so grateful for, King County Equity Now, Africatown, Dope Culture LLC with Anthony Tibbs, who's hired me to do that work in community, whether it's a concert or, it's, Juneteenth. I will be at Soul on the Water, August 16th with Bilal. So, and so many other amazing, oh my gosh, this amazing lineup. But I'm grateful for it because it is a way, what I love about the events we do, there's always some level of education in it. It's not only entertainment, right? We're always talking about the ways for people to stay engaged in the movement of Black liberation. I mean, that's a big deal. Whether it's like, okay, reparations or something else, they're just the understanding that you're going to get some of that education when you come to these events as well, which I think is so valuable and key. But it's taken me to other places in the country. It's taken me to places around the globe because I am still my authentic self, and it's a part of my brand as TreaAnna Holliday that has allowed me to kind of transcend just the Pacific Northwest. Last year I was in Kenya for Madaraka Festival, and I was hosting there, and it was great to be there. And like, people didn't know me, but they was rocking with me, right? It was good times. So I'm grateful for the opportunities because they've allowed me to build on that. And so I'm looking forward to more speaking engagements, more opportunities, really looking to connect with a lot of communication departments. I think that's some of the work around the brilliance of community media is necessary to kind of spread in a general sense, right? We're doing it here, and I think it's being done in other places for sure. But the need for us to really kind of understand the next generation of this, the next iteration of it is going to be pretty important. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that work as well.
No, I love that. And then how can like creative change makers partner with you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I am easily findable on Instagram. It's probably the best platform. I miss messages if they're on Facebook. So I feel bad because I used to have someone running it and I would get all the things. And now, y'all, it really is me. And I'm working on someone running it again soon because it's a lot.
It's a lot.
And I don't want to miss opportunities. I missed some big opportunities. Like I was like, oh no, they wanted me for like MSNBC as like a moderator, a panelist or something. And I was like, oh no, a contributor. So, find me at Trey Holliday on Instagram. Can always reach out to me too, Trey at whereweconverge.com, or TreyHolliday@gmail.com. I'm working on my website right now. It'll be TreyHolliday.com.
Hey.
And folks will be able to find me there as well.
Dope. So I'd like to wrap up every show with our quick fire round. So quick questions and just quick little answers. Things that we covered a lot. Hopefully folks have gotten some value and some inspiration. And it was just good just to go down memory lane with you, sis, for sure. But here's a nice little fun one to round us out. What creative outlet gives you the most joy?
Oh my goodness. That's a tough question.
Coming with the hard ones.
That's a tough question because the day with Trey, I mean, just sitting and listening to people's lives and experiences and their inspiring stories, I'm so like blessed. I'm like, oh my God, I get to do this and share. But I also will say there's something really special about connecting with youth. Like almost any time I can do that. And so when I think about the Teen Summer Musical and what Acts on Stage does, not only because my son is in it, this is his 3rd year, but just the joy of the kids. And it takes me to a time and place of that same theater joy that was like, I get to be this character and I'm going to rock this character, right? So very much, I love what they do.
No, I love that. What's one word to describe the day with Trey energy?
Inspiring.
Amen to that. What's the first thing you read, watch, or listen to in the morning?
It's a meditation. Yeah, it's a meditation to remind me that I am, in fact, a divine being. I have the power of my choices and making divine choices with every choice I make. It grounds me.
I love that. What's your most memorable on-air moment you've had so far?
Sherry Shepherd.
Oh,
1,000%.
Come on.
She not only
gives me chills thinking about that one.
She not only affirmed me on camera, but off camera. She's just such a solid person. And I'm so grateful for our continued relationship since meeting her. 100%.
That was the first musical performance in the space, right?
Oh, well, Shayna Shepherd.
Oh, Shayna, I'm sorry.
Shayna is a phenomenal, but Sherry Shepherd as this like daytime queen of TV.
Yes.
Right? She was here for her comedy special, and I was so grateful that she was like, yeah, I'll come down to the studio. She made time. We sat there way longer than we anticipated. She shared her contact with me. She's like, no, hit me up. I want to keep in contact with you because what you're doing is brilliant. And she affirmed me at the end of the interview saying, I can't believe you're doing all this without a prompter. She's like, she's like, y'all, let me just stop you right there. She's doing all this without a prompter. And, she said, I'm going to tell Oprah, I'm going to do the Trey Holliday method, right? And it really struck me. Just a phenomenal moment for me, for sure. Right? Like she's doing dope, big things, and she could recognize me, and that meant something special.
And you are special for that. Like a lot of people don't realize, like they think it might be some kind of whatever. And granted, it's a lot of, good lighting, cameras, all that. But so much of that comes from your brilliance and your ability to just kind of think and just bring it. And there's times where it's like, I see you get thrown into situations like without let me just, all right, what are my quick little bullet points? All right, got it. And I'm like, wait, hold on. How did you pull all of that on stage with that little, 'cause I saw it. It was 3 bullet points. And you turned that into a dissertation on stage, and that was amazing to watch.
So grateful.
What's a book, podcast, or series that's helped shape your leadership?
Oh my goodness, the Maduna Tier series, written by Raul Neframin the first. Maduna Tier is what some would deem as the Black Bible, right? But it was just the understanding of what our ancestors knew and practiced in terms of spiritual development. And to have access to that now in my life has been truly transformational. And again, has really anchored me in the way that I move even more so, right? Like some things you're like, oh, that's what I do already. But it's taught me so much. And the practices that are embedded there, again, have just, truly changed my life for the better.
That's awesome. Which gives you more energy, hosting live or crafting that perfect written message?
Live, for sure.
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't write a lot
Right.
down, right? I mean, I'm grateful for this divine download. That's what I call it, because it can be nothing other than the divine.
Excellent. And then the last one is finish this sentence. I feel most powerful when.
God. You're going to make me cry. I feel most powerful when I look at my babies, my sons. I mean, they are incredible, incredible young men. And I'm so grateful to have been chosen to be their mother, both of them, and my grandbaby. I mean, I can't imagine that they have turned out, I mean, the way that they are right now. They're just brilliant. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you cry. But yeah, no, they are. There's some amazing young men for sure. Man. Well, geez. We took it all the way there. That was a moment though. Yeah. I'm grateful, and thank you for sharing that. You got your camera over here if you want to share any last things with folks in terms of what can they expect next, again, how they connect with you, and just kind of, anything you want to share with the people.
Oh, wow. Shout out to Elite Collective and this phenomenal platform. I just want to say to any of you out there who are, struggling with your purpose, we're all here for a reason. And I just want to encourage you to carry your energy forward day in and day out. I am one who I'm so thankful, and I know the blessings abound in the opportunity for me to live in my purpose, on purpose. Shout out to Chardonnay Beaver, forgive me that one. But I want to say that is here for us all. And while I'm grateful, I want everyone to find their niche. What is it you're here to do? Why do you exist? Because you exist for a reason. Y'all can always find me on Instagram at Trey Holliday. Go ahead and follow my journey. I look forward to sharing with you all. Thanks for watching.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And again, guys, from production roots to state level execution, TreaAnna's journey is something that is amazing to watch. When you see communication and combined with intentionality, this is what it can be. So be sure to stay tuned. She's doing amazing things. Stay tuned for TreaHolliday.com coming at you. But right now, catch up with her at Converge Media and with Office of Equity, and just tap in and stay tuned, because she's always bringing resources. She's bringing stories. She's bringing inspiration, and I'm just grateful that we had this moment to share. And again, it's Carl Imani with Elite Insights, where we elevate, amplify, and engage. See you next time, guys. Peace.